Once upon a time, a train was on a long journey, traveling from one city to another, about 2,000 kilometers away. The passengers were a mix of families, workers, and travelers, all eager to reach their destination. The day was long but peaceful, with the rhythmic clattering of the train on the tracks keeping everyone calm. Suddenly, without warning, the train jolted and slowed down. The engine started making strange noises, a metallic grinding that echoed through the cabins. The train came to an abrupt stop in the middle of nowhere. The crew hurried out to check the engine, only to return with bad news. The train needed repairs that would take at least a couple of days. Stranded, the passengers had no choice but to wait in the middle of a desolate landscape. As night fell, a thick blanket of darkness covered the land, and an eerie silence filled the air. People tried to rest, but something felt off. It started with soft knocks on the windows, just gentle taps at first. Some thought it was the wind, but then the knocks grew louder. Strange, distant screams followed, faint at first, but growing sharper and more urgent as the night deepened. Several brave passengers, clutching flashlights, stepped outside to investigate. But when they looked around, there was nothing. No animals, no people, just the cold wind and the dark, empty land surrounding them. Confused and uneasy, they returned to the train, locking the doors behind them. The next night, the sounds returned, but this time, much worse. The knocking turned into violent banging on the windows and doors. The screams sounded closer, almost inside the train itself. Panic spread. The passengers whispered about what could be out there. Some suggested it was a wild animal. Others believed it was something worse. No one wanted to say the word aloud, but the fear was there. A devil. Then, as the clock struck midnight, the fear became reality. From the fog, a figure emerged. A towering, shadowy form with glowing red eyes. It stood just outside the train, watching, waiting. The passengers screamed, backing away from the windows in terror. The creature moved along the side of the train, banging on the doors, its eyes burning with malevolence. The passengers were trapped. The creature, the devil, seemed intent on getting inside. People huddled together, praying for morning, but the devil showed no sign of leaving. It was relentless, pounding on the train with inhuman strength, its red eyes piercing through the darkness. Amidst the chaos, one person refused to be paralyzed by fear. A young boy named Momin, only 12 years old, stood apart from the others. While everyone else was frozen in terror, Momin's mind raced. He had always been brave and curious, and he refused to believe that this devil couldn't be stopped. If the devil was real, then there had to be a way to defeat it. Momin quietly slipped away from the frightened crowd and made his way to the front of the train, where the engineers were frantically trying to get the engine working. But even they were terrified, unable to focus as the devil's presence grew stronger. Momin asked the engineers for help, but they were too shaken to listen. So the boy took matters into his own hands. He grabbed a small toolbox from the train's maintenance kit and decided to face the devil himself. Armed only with his courage and the tools in his hands, he stepped outside into the cold, foggy night. The air was icy, and the fog was so thick that Momin could barely see. But he knew the devil was out there. He could feel it, lurking in the shadows, watching him. As he moved forward, his heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't let fear stop him. He knew he had to be smart. This wasn't just a battle of strength, it was a battle of wits. Momin had noticed something the night before. The devil never entered the train. It stayed outside, as if it was bound to the land around them. That meant there had to be something holding it there, something keeping it from getting too close. As Momin searched the ground, he saw markings etched into the earth around the train, strange symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the fog. The symbols radiated an unnatural energy, and Momin realized that these markings were connected to the devil. They were summoning it, keeping it tied to this place. Without hesitation, Momin got to work. Using a hammer and a screwdriver from the toolbox, he began chipping away at the symbols. It wasn't easy. The ground was hard, and the fog made it difficult to see. But Momin was determined. As he destroyed each marking, he could feel the air grow lighter, and the devil's presence seemed to weaken. But just as he thought he was making progress, the devil appeared behind him. Its red eyes blazed with fury as it let out a deafening roar that shook the very ground beneath him. Momin froze, the creature's towering shadow looming over him. It was angry, angrier than ever, and it was coming straight for him. Momin's hands trembled, but he didn't stop. With one final strike, he shattered the last of the symbols. The ground beneath the devil cracked, and a blinding light erupted from the earth. The creature let out a terrible guttural scream as it began to disintegrate, its shadowy form breaking apart and disappearing into the light. Momin fell to the ground, exhausted but alive. The devil was gone. The air was calm, the fog had lifted, and the strange cold that had plagued the train vanished. When Momin returned to the train, the passengers were stunned. They had been watching from the windows, witnessing the impossible. The boy had defeated the devil. By morning, the train repairs were complete, and the journey resumed. As they pulled away from the cursed land, the passengers whispered about the brave young boy who had saved them all. Momin sat quietly in his seat, watching the landscape pass by, knowing that sometimes even the most terrifying things could be defeated with courage and a bit of clever thinking.